You ever have one of those days where you think you're just going to toss a few breadcrumbs to the ducks, maybe catch a breeze off the lake, and then bam, your life takes a sharp left turn? You never saw it coming. That was me and my wife Emily sitting on our old dock at Pine Ridge Lake, Wisconsin, trying to soak up some peace when Victoria Langford, the iron-fisted queen bee of the HOA, came marching up our path like she owned every square inch of it, clipboard gripped like a weapon, eyes scanning for trouble, ready to pounce. And if you told me back then that this same woman would be dragged off in FBI cuffs just 3 weeks later, her empire of lies crashing down in flames, I'd have laughed in your face. Honestly, if you'd told me my wife, the same Emily Victoria wrote off as a harmless homemaker, was about to unravel the whole twisted mess, I might have laughed even harder. But hey, you live, you learn. I'm Alex Thompson. 45 used to be a park ranger until a bad fall sidelined me, and 3 years ago, Emily and I found our little slice of heaven in this weathered old cabin. It wasn't much by fancy standards, but we loved it. Rough logs, a dock that groaned when you walked out on it, wildflowers popping up everywhere, the lake glimmering gold in the morning sun. I thought it'd be the perfect spot for Emily to recover from the burnout she carried home after years in fraud investigations. City life had chewed us up and out. Here it was supposed to be quiet, simple, safe. Neighbors seemed friendly at first. Margaret Ellis, the sweet retiree with baskets of tomatoes, always waving and chatting about her garden. Richard Caldwell, who could turn any conversation into a rant about golf or property values. But the queen of the block was Victoria. She ruled from a showplace mansion that looked like a magazine ad, a place people whispered she'd saved from developers a decade ago. Folks treated her like some kind of savior. Me, I wasn't so sure. Something about her hero act never quite lined up. And sure enough, that one chilly morning, Emily and I are just out feeding the ducks, and here comes Victoria Heels stabbing the gravel blazer so sharp it could cut glass. No hello, just right to business immediate compliance inspection. Supposedly, our dock stuck out 3 inches too far. Our cabin's stain was off color. Emily's wildflowers threatened the ecosystem, and our bird feeders were practically an act of terrorism. She barely even looked at me. Mr. Thompson, your rustic aesthetic undermines the sophisticated image we've cultivated. Then, like a parting shot, she glances at Emily and says, "Perhaps the adults should handle this. You ever want to punch the air out of someone's smug?" Yeah, that was me. But Emily, God bless her, she just smiled, sweet as pie. "Oh, you're absolutely right. Maybe you could share those financial documents you mentioned. I'd love to learn how it all works." Victoria's ego, inflated to the size of her mansion, handed Emily a business card and strutted off, certain she'd won. Little did she know Emily was already on the hunt, mentally highlighting every oddity in the paperwork. The next day, mailbox stuffed with 47 violation notices, duck feeding, dock extension, dangerous wildflowers, wrong color stain, you name it, totaling over $12,000 in fines, and a threat that it had jumped to $20,000 with $50 daily penalties if we didn't comply. It was so over the top, I started doubting my own sanity. And yeah, I measured that dock myself. 3 inches is what the width of a credit card. Give me a break. It felt like a shakedown dressed up as community standards. I was about ready to pay the fine just to end the madness, but Emily had other plans. She spread Victoria's compliance docs all over our kitchen table, pointed out a $30,000 payment to Lakeside Innovations, a company owned by Victoria's late husband, who'd been dead for months. "Dead men don't cash checks," Emily said with that glint in her eye I hadn't seen since the old days. Turns out Victoria had a web of shell companies, maintenance, consulting, landscaping, all inflating charges, or billing for things that never happened, skimming close to $90,000 in 2 years. Every contract was signed by her boyfriend Jonathan, the town's greasiest lawyer. I almost had to respect the hustle, almost. Victoria cranked the pressure higher with a public safety forum at the clubhouse, projecting photos of our cabin as the source of all the neighborhood's problems. Jonathan, smooth as oil, hinted at foreclosures and liens if we didn't fall in line. Neighbors we'd barbecued with who'd borrowed tools suddenly looked at us like we were poison. Richard even stood up and called us trailer park trash, dragging everyone down. Emily just sat there recording it all, asking pointed questions about HOA finances, and Jonathan's panic. Yeah, he tried to play it cool, but you could see it every time Emily mentioned Lakeside Innovations. His face twitched. Afterward, Margaret slipped Emily a folder. She'd been treasurer before Victoria shut her out. Said the numbers never added up, but she was too scared to go public. Inside was 3 years' worth of smoking gun records, money trails, fake invoices, the works. Victoria fought back with psychological warfare cameras pointed at our house, secret meetings, half the neighbors refusing to speak to us, Richard out collecting signatures to get us kicked out. We were pariahs, prisoners in our own home. The fines grew, and so did the threats, legal letters, warnings of bankruptcy, foreclosure, you name it. One afternoon, I came home to find Jonathan standing in our living room snapping photos claiming an emergency inspection because our bird feeders supposedly attracted rabid animals. He handed me a restraining order, accused us of harassing officials with our budget questions. You ever feel like you're living in a bad movie? That was me. I almost packed it in, started looking at real estate ads anywhere but here. But Emily, turns out she's made of iron. She called the FBI. Cool as a cucumber, laid out the evidence, listed every shell company and fraudulent contract all the way to the dollar. A week later, an agent named Ramirez shows up, mid-40s, suit too sharp for Lake Country, but serious as a heart attack. He camped at our kitchen table for hours asking questions, gathering files, nodding like he'd seen it all before. Meanwhile, Victoria goes full panic, burning papers in her backyard, ringing neighbors' doorbells, spinning stories about how we're jealous, unstable, making it all up. Jonathan's response was next-level slime. He fabricated evidence of Emily's supposed misconduct from years back, tried to poison the investigation with anonymous tips, claiming she'd cost past employers millions. Suddenly, the FBI freezes the case. Neighbors throw Victoria a potluck in her honor, and I watch Emily, who's always so sure of herself, start to doubt everything. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, she whispered one night, staring at the ceiling. That's when my own switch flipped. I dug into Jonathan, used my old Ranger contacts, checked court filings. Turns out he'd been sanctioned for shady lawsuits before, and our security cam caught him sneaking onto our property copying files. I handed it all to Ramirez, evidence tampering, intimidation, the whole 9 yards. The mood shifted, you could feel it coming. As if that wasn't enough, I found out Victoria was selling chunks of protected wetland, hidden under layers of paperwork, to interstate developers, breaking every environmental law in the book. So we organized a community cleanup day and quietly invited the FBI to watch. That night, Victoria and Jonathan showed up with a pair of goons, tried to bribe us $150,000 in cash for our silence, if you can believe it. On tape, no less. Victoria melted down, screaming about how she built this community. Richard Shaken confessed later that Victoria had ordered him to sabotage the event, even talked about arranging an accident for us. I've been a fool, he said, eyes brimming with regret. Cleanup day dawned bright, the whole neighborhood out, unaware a couple FBI agents were hiding in plain sight. Emily stood up and addressed the crowd, asking for financial transparency, but Victoria tried to shut it all down, screaming over her, Jonathan spewing lies about Emily's career. That's when Richard finally broke ranks, called out Victoria for her crimes. I dropped the bomb about the wetland sales federal violations, plain and simple. Victoria lost it, lunged at Emily, screaming she'd destroyed everything. FBI badges flashed, agents moving in fast, handcuffs snapping shut. Jonathan bolted, slipped on the dock, and fell flat, papers flying. Most satisfying thing I've ever seen. The apologies poured in. Margaret, sobbing, told us she'd known something was off but was too scared to act. Later, sitting on that same dock, Emily admitted she hadn't just come here to heal. She'd scouted Pine Ridge as a potential fraud case. The high fees and complaints had caught her eye. Our move was a mix of rest and undercover work, and she played the helpless wife to catch Victoria off guard. Some folks would call that manipulative. I call it justice. 1 year on Victoria's doing 15 years in federal prison. Jonathan's disbarred and serving 10. The HOA is reformed. The wetlands are safe. And Emily runs her own anti-fraud consulting firm now. I'm back to leading wilderness tours, teaching kids about conservation, and yeah, how to spot a con. And I guess you could say our marriage is stronger than ever, forged in the fires of HOA hell. Victoria thought she was bullying a pushover. Instead, she found a hunter lying in wait. In the end, justice was served slow but absolute. Still, there's debate in the neighborhood. Did we do the right thing, or did we tear the place apart for good? What would you have done in our shoes? Drop a comment and let's see where folks stand on the line between justice, revenge, and keeping the peace.